You are listening to the Tenets on the Kyle Dempster Studios Network. To support us, visit patreon.com/Kyle Dempster Studios. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a new episode of The Tenets. My name is Kyle, and I'm joined here by my co-host, as always, Stark Realm. How are you, Stark?
I can live.
That's more than we're all going to be doing in less than 20 days when everyone's a necromancer killing each other and resurrecting them. So, winning.
Well, we told you to make friends.
And these ones are permanent. These ones that you resurrect are going to be your friends for life, at least until their bones turn back into dust, and then it's sad all over again. But welcome back, everybody, to the show. It is May 1st while we're recording this. You guys will get this episode on Sunday. As we mentioned last week, we're recording on Wednesdays now, and just giving our schedules a little bit of breathing room here. So as of today, or by the time you guys have listened to this, you'll have already seen that the Crown Store Showcase hit. So there's been news about that. A lot of costumes this month. We're getting that Frost Vault house with a furnishing pack alongside of it. A thing to note, Stark, we didn't talk about this off air, but the Adventures pack is going away on May 20th, but the Any Race, Any Alliance is breaking out of that pack. So I'm guessing that means that little Guar goes away. Just a heads up.
Yeah, probably does.
So if you want to grab that Guar, now's the time to do it. And the bonus is that you can roll Any Race, Any Alliance. That's a pretty cool perk. As long as some treasure maps, which never really interested me, so I don't mind those going by the wayside.
Well, those aren't actually. Like the new Any Race, Any Alliance bundle's still going to have those treasure maps.
Will it? Because it doesn't sound like a bundle. Did they say that?
It says right there, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
I don't know.
I'm reading right now off the thing. It's like also contains a name and race change token. So that's the nice thing, right?
Oh.
It's experience scrolls and a collection of treasure maps. That sounds like it's the same treasure map set.
Oh, well, bummer. I didn't actually read that line. I'm glad you called that out. I mean, treasure maps are fine, but they're kind of meh.
Those ones, if those are the same ones as before, that's kind of underwhelming because they do not have set drops in them. So it really is just intended like, oh, hey, you're leveling, go out and grab this stuff as you're going around and exploring the world for the first time. It's not, you're not supposed to save the collector's edition treasure maps for endgame because there really isn't a point to that.
Makes sense.
To be fair, from design, I don't think you're supposed to be saving treasure maps anyway. I think that's just something a lot of people do. So,
hey, I got a great add-on. I'm going to shout this out. You may already know this one because you use something similar, but I got into auto category yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
And is that the exact same one you use?
Mm-hmm. That's the one we were doing the thing where we're going through the add-ons.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, but I'm not going to blind recommend this. And then I scroll down to the next page on the notes and it's right there. And I'm like, well, this is awkward.
Well, so the thing is, though, I remember you saying it took a lot of setup to use auto category, or at least you did a lot of setup.
Yeah, when I did it, it took quite a bit to sort it out and get it to work.
There is a new one called auto category. Well, just search auto category. Then there's comes up with one for ready for Wrathstone, and it required 0 setup, and it has been working a charm so far. Now, I don't know if it has as fine grain of control as you did when you set yours up very manually, but I mean, it did everything I wanted to do, and it told me that my bank is using 100 of its slots for surveys and treasures.
Yeah,
that means I have over 100. And
I think
my life is a disaster.
Because that's actually the update. Because I've got it installed currently. I think what's changed is that the basic format they had set up, like when you first log in, you just install it. I think they have a better format now for the default setups.
Well,
because when I did it, I had to spend a lot of time messing around with the filters. To get the categories I wanted. And when I was looking at with yours, because I saw it on stream when you were going around, I'm like, oh, hey, you started using it. And it looked like it had been, you actually configured it. So, yeah, they've probably gone through and cleaned up the configuration a bit.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. And I just want everyone to know that I am running, so it's auto category, plus advanced filters, plus pixel perfect, which makes my inventory very large on the screen, plus I think it's gear set sort, so it lets me sort the sets even within the gear category. So just letting you guys know, if you like any of those individual add-ons, maybe try combining them together because they make for a very, very handy inventory layout. I really, really like it. And sorry, we just got really tangented off of the treasure maps, but also a call out that the Alliance Rider outfit, the Alliance Hood, the Alliance Horse, and the Alliance War Dog are all leaving the Crown Store. I believe that date is May 20th for those. So if you want to represent your faction come May 20th, you will need to have bought them ahead of time. So just a friendly heads up. This is a complete
tangential thing. It's supposed to disappoint me a little bit that they didn't do anything beyond the rider outfit, because it always struck me as like, okay, well, now you've got this sort of scout gear for a character, but we never got like an Alliance armor set. And there is an Alliance motif, right? Like you can actually deck your character
gonna say
out.
That, yeah.
But there was never a sort of corresponding costume concept where it's like you have characters for heavy armor or you've got characters that are mages, where it's the same idea of you put the costume on and it switches based on your Alliance.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, my brain did immediately jump, to the motifs, but you're right. You're right.
Yeah. Well, these date to about the same time as the motifs. So the motifs were already a thing by the time these rolled along.
Yeah.
I forget if we had access to the motifs when they first came out.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Well,
so it's...
Make sure you guys buy those Alliance things if you want them, because they'll probably be gone for a good while, I would imagine. But then again, anytime I speculate, they come back the next month or something like that. So, yeah, I would snag him if you can. I might actually buy that Alliance War Dog because he's the only piece I'm missing from the set of those. So, slight interest just to say I've got the whole collection. We are on today's episode, as you can tell, we're already very tangential. Tangential? Thank you. My words aren't working. We're doing that today, and we're going to be doing a lot of it because we are going to be talking about how to prevent burnout in ESO, because we are in probably the most awkward 20 days of the annual cycle, I imagine. This is the time where we have a lot to do on May 20th, but we have almost nothing to do as of May 1st, because I know a lot of people out there are looking to roll a Necromancer. I'm sure not everyone will, but there's going to be a lot of Necromancers, myself included. And so I'm at that point where I log in and I do my stream, and I can see that the community is probably at its lowest point in a couple months. I mean, the guild isn't as active, but it's just hard to set goals right now because... well, I mean, I don't really care to dive deeper in the character I'm on. You know, he's got what achievements he has, and, you know, we're going to talk about that and how to achievement hunt and things here in a minute. But what do we do? How do we prevent burnout? We've got all these events happening. So, Stark, are you feeling it too, or is it just isolated, or what's the deal here?
Well, I think I actually pointed this out when we were off air. I think I finally went back and finished Murkmire, so I've been procrastinating on that for a while. And it was actually really nice and really convenient that I'd done that, because it meant I was running new content on live that I'd skipped up to this point without it being like, oh, I'm going to this zone that I've done 90% of the content, but I've skipped a couple of quests. So yeah, it's nice to be able to say, okay, so here's some new stuff to do right now. Mm-hmm. And if you've got zones you haven't done yet, that's actually a very viable thing to do, is just jump in and run some content you haven't looked at yet, even if you're planning on rolling up a Necromancer and coming back to this stuff later.
That's a good point. And that's kind of one of the things that I have been, people keep recommending to me. They're like, you should go do some questing stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I really should, but I really want to do it on my Necromancer. And I fear so many of the things I've said come back to that. And I feel like a lot of the Stark does, I feel like it's a little bit of a multiplicative issue here, where we've already got this burnout that's destined to happen. This always happens prior to, you know, or during this drought of content. Like, we know that there's no new content happening right now because it's just about to happen. Mm-hmm. But it comes on the heels of us being 4 weeks into a very long event, which is the 5-year anniversary. And we've here and there, probably on this show, definitely on the stream, definitely off air, have discussed how we find these events to be kind of dangerous to morale, because they're a big flash in the pan. You know, I'm sure ZeniMax sees a large uptick in player usage. You know, people are logging in every day. Well, hey, when the event wasn't going on, they weren't logging in every day. But the danger to logging in every single day is that builds a lot of long-term burnout. So you're getting that flash in the pan, but it's a very short sort of thing I'm seeing. Because I'm starting to hear more of it on Twitch. You know, I am really tired of logging in every day to get my ticket. Or I am very tired of logging in to do these daily quests to get my gold boxes.
Well, the funny thing about this is I think the 2-week events are probably pretty well calibrated. Like when it's 2 weeks, and ironically, also New Life gets a pass on this too, because New Life is asking you to do stuff you don't do the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you're actually min-maxing it, it's going to give you a variety of things each day, right?
True.
Now, the thing about New Life is there are 9 quests each day, and you can do all 9. You can do all 9 on multiple characters. I don't particularly recommend doing that unless you're really committed to the grind. But if you just want to log in and you want to get, like you're logging in for your ticket, it's just you log in, you do a quest, and that quest is going to be selected randomly, right? And then you'll do that quest, and they're thematic and they're not normal, and they do sort of have a holiday theme to them. So they're actually pretty cool. And then you're done for the day. Another one that I think we ran through, and I think you passed on this mostly, was the Thieves Guild Dark Brotherhood weekly.
Right. Because I was at ZeniMax and out of state for most of that. So I think I was only around for a day of it. So I kind of passed it.
But that's also one where it's because it's the heist dailies and the sacrament dailies, those are random. You have done the sacraments, so you know how those work. So even though you're being asked to log in and do the same thing every day, it doesn't feel like you're logging in and doing the same thing every day.
Mm-hmm.
And the other side is, I think it was either a week or 2 weeks and it was done.
That's very true.
As opposed to this, where it's now been over a month. We've been, or almost over a month. It's the anniversary's been going since the 4th of last month.
Jeez.
And yeah.
Well,
so this is a little bit of backstory, and this is when I was in the same boat that you were in with the Thieves Guild thing, because I missed a bunch of the Jesters Festival last year.
Oh yeah,
for the same reason, and there were issues with that. For I think it was PCEU had login issues for a couple of days. So because that backs straight into the anniversary event, they extended the anniversary event to 3 weeks.
Ooh.
And it was kind of like, well, this is too long. This is really grueling by the end of it. And I think after the anniversary event, I logged out for nearly a week and then came back in. I was like, okay, I'm back. But this, I don't really mean to trash on anybody, but this has been pretty grueling. The 5 weeks has been grueling.
No. Go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, go ahead.
No, you continue.
And I think they did something very smart with this year's anniversary event, where it's okay, well, you're going to do your dailies, but they're going to be varied each day.
Mm-hmm.
Or each week, it changes out. So last week was PvP, week before that was Overland, Delves, and Dungeons. The problem is the way this is set up, it's still encouraging you to run a bunch of content for this event. It's not because we're going to have the Undaunted Festival at the end of the year again, and that's going to be do a random normal dungeon. Okay, that rewards you just for doing a random piece of content. And if we can get past the part where a lot of people just immediately port Fungal 1 every day, then that's still a pretty viable, solid option where you get some variety as you go. But with this, and actually this week is the exception, because this week we've got pledges, but it's still, you're being asked to do the same thing every day. And it gets pretty grueling with this, in a way that the other events don't usually get. Even when it's just the writs, because again, those are going to come up, and by the time you're hearing this, the writs are going to be open again. So it gets kind of grueling, where you're jumping in, you're doing the same writ, you're doing the writs every day, and it's well, I'm doing the same thing constantly, and that does encourage burnout, because you're being asked to repeat content as a grind, as opposed to grab stuff that's appealing or grab stuff that's pulled out of a bag. In contrast, when we had the weekly with the dailies with the delves, the other week, you'd get a random delve quest, you'd get a random world boss quest. You can go and you can do that, and if you want, you're done. But because of the way the box system goes, it does kind of encourage you to grab as many of those quests as you can get. So that ends up a little bit on our heads, where it's okay, we're going to keep running this. But yeah, there's been some weird stuff with this. And then, of course, for this event, it's just use the log in, use the memento, log out. Right. And then everything else after that is chasing after the cool cosmetics that you want. I certainly do. But yeah, this has been a recipe for burnout, unfortunately.
I think this is I would love to actually continue this events conversation. And since we have some time in our schedule, if we go on with this and start, really tangenting here, it doesn't matter. We can always do a part 2 of preventing burnout. But, the events, we've kind of talked here and there about this before. I feel like these events are just not very impactful in this game. And I'm not sure if it's because they're trying so hard to have so many. Every time we add new content to the game, because of the celebration events throughout the year, right? There's a lot of we're going to honor the Thieves Guild and the Dark Brotherhood, and we're going to honor this thing and that thing, and Clockwork City, and everything in between. It kind of
There's something about those. There is something interesting about those, though, because when you do I
don't know
the
if it's going to redeem
DLC,
this.
Well, it's not. When you do the DLC daily, when you do the DLC events, right? Because okay, this released in this quarter 3 years ago, so we're going to put it out as an anniversary for this specific piece of content, right? When they do that, they do encourage you to run content in that. So, when Rothgar rolls around, they double the drop rates for the VMA gear. So every time you crack something in Maelstrom, you're going to get 2 of them. Every time you do one of the dailies in there, you get 2 coffers. Every time you loot nodes in that zone, you get double the crafting mats. And that last piece means if you haven't done PvE content there, you haven't played through the storyline in Rothgar, that's an incentive just to get you in the zone and looking at it and wandering around. And when the events are completely optional and aren't tied to something like the Indrik progression system, that's actually really good, because it's a very subtle way of saying, oh, hey, did you check out this thing that's been in the game for a while, but it might be new to you? And of course, if you're a very advanced player, you're not, you're actually in danger of burning out from stuff like this. Oh, hey, I get double crafting mats. I don't care.
Yeah.
That's great for the people who need it, but that doesn't affect me. Or if you got the people who've done 300, 400 VMA runs where they go in, that's their day. And okay, double drops, that's fantastic, but it doesn't matter if they've already got the gear they want. So it's not affecting them positively or negatively. But with this, it's okay, well, they're encouraging you to do stuff in a different, do different things that you normally wouldn't.
Right.
But somehow the rapid fire nature of this has just been brutal. Because again, I love Mid-Year Mayhem, right?
Same.
It gives you a lot of stuff to play with in PvP. It encourages you to go into PvP even if you wouldn't normally. And I think it's a really fun event. But last week with the Abner Tharn pages, okay, I just did the delves and the world bosses every day. Now you want me to do the PvP stuff every day? Eek.
Yeah, and I just went to the ESO website and counted all of the unique pieces of content we had. And I counted elsewhere in this as well, just looking forward at the future. We have 14 different items to be celebrated. Imperial City, Orsinium, Thieves Guild, so on and so forth. That is more things to celebrate than we have months in a year.
Yeah.
And the danger of what I heard from what you were saying, in addition with my own, what I've heard from Twitch, is that it's kind of training people to just be drones. We're incentivizing pieces of content, which is good, but also bad, because, in my opinion, because I hear you say, you get double things if you go do it then during this event. Well, okay. If I get incentivized to do things during this month, then I should only ever run it that month, because next month, why run it? There's a new event. I should go there and do that. And the month after that, I should do this. And the month after that. For example, I should never go. This is a slippery slope argument I'm making, and I understand the fallacies, but they're not out of the. I'm making these, and they're a little bit embellished, but not much. Because why should I ever go to Morrowind if the Morrowind event's not happening? Because it's going to happen next year, and I know I'm going to get double node farming, double this, double that, double the other. And if every month, and the real danger is that we are looking at these hitting the events are starting within about a week of each other at the current rate. So the complaint I'm seeing from people on Twitch is, I don't have time to do the base game, the normal stuff. Not even just the base game, meaning the old world content, but I don't have time to go quest around a zone or run dungeons or run this, that, and the other, because I'm being I'm being herded down this path. And I just feel like maybe someone at the company is making that call that we need people to log in. We want these numbers to be really high. But I worry that does not breed true MMO players, that instead that kind of does start to breed almost a sheeple mentality of like, well, I got to log in today because I've been told that there's a bonus to doing this, but I can't do what I really want to do. I've got to do this specific event.
Yeah.
And now we're going to get to the point where we're actually going to see the fallout. We're going to see what happens when you get people addicted to something and then cold turkey them. Because this event, so we're recording this again on May 1st. That means tomorrow, which is Thursday, we'll be in the final week, right? That's the do anything for the celebration.
Yeah, do anything.
So by the time you guys hear this, you'll only even have like a couple days left of the do anything portion. You guys will get this on Sunday. You'll have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and the event closes Thursday morning. But then what? I mean, we have Mid-Year Mayhem, and I don't remember exactly what time that starts, but isn't it closer to July or something?
I thought it was actually August last year, but they seem to have moved this stuff. They seem to have moved this stuff around.
Well, and I wonder if that, again, sorry for being so cynical, ZeniMax and people that love the game as much as we do, but it's true. I mean, this stuff is starting to come so rapid fire that I don't doubt they're starting to make readjustments to the schedule. I just would like to see more downtime between them because, okay, people have what? I'm pulling up my calendar here. They will conclude the event on the 9th. That gives people about a solid week and 3 days before Elsewhere hits. And then, I don't know, looks like there's going to be about a month where people are going to probably, month or more, where people are going to be cold turkey between another event starting up. So I don't know what that means, but if anyone from ZeniMax is listening, I implore you guys, take a look at what the players are actually saying here about how they're feeling kind of strung out on these events at this point. I mean, we have rapid fired from Summerfall close, like that event happened. Then, 2 weeks later, they got Murkmire and the Witches Festival started. And then right after that was, I think it was like Clockwork City Celebration and Undaunted events. And then straight into the mid-year, or the New Life. And then directly into the January Mid-Year Mayhem. And then other events that I can't even remember in between. And I feel like people haven't stopped. And I worry what that's doing to the community. Mm-hmm. And I kind of wonder what this Indrik thing looks like in the long run, like a year in review of the quote unquote the Indrik event. Go ahead.
Eek. I was going to say there's an element of this. There's an element with the events that is a little bit of a be careful what you wish for, because this is something the community was asking for. Very, very strongly asking for back in 2014 and 2015, where it was like, we want in-game events. And I opened up the UESP page for events and ESO, and it's like the first 2 years of the game, there were only 3 things that they're classifying as events, and none of those were events. The first event was actually in the 3rd year of the game being up and running, because that was when the first time they did a Jubilee event was in 2016.
Okay.
So, like, this was not on the table for years, and there was a lot, like, the feedback continued, like the original round of events. And again, like, I'm looking at their page and they're including some stuff that wasn't really an event. The original round of events was the Jubilee event, the Witches Festival, New Life, right? So these are all very impactful. And then Jester's Festival. I think those 4 are really solid, along with the Undaunted event and the Mid-Year Mayhem are a really strong basis for events that occur annually. But also starting in 2016, they started doing the various festivals that are attached to the DLC releases. And I think that's where we start to get into problems with the community, like just for Burnout, where it's like, it's starting to point back to events where it was like, okay, this came out last year today. Go in there, the DLC's on sale. It's encouraging to take a look at that. I think that's all fine. And I think on its own, that would have been like, they can keep doing that in the background. Yeah. Because again, it's not, if you play Arsenium and you're like, I enjoy this, right? I enjoy this story. I enjoy the orcs. And then it's like, okay, but I'm not getting double nodes here. So what? Right. The same thing with Vardenfell. Like you were talking about with Morrowind, like you have a Morrowind event, you go to Morrowind, you take a look, and it's like, oh, hey, this is cool, but why would I do this any other time? Because it's cool and because you're enjoying yourself and you're doing new content. Right. There. The one thing that I think's come with the Indrik that it's unfortunate is because the tickets, and especially because of the increase in ticket use with this event, where it's like, okay, you can buy tickets to, or you can get tickets to get the pages you're missing, and the encouragement to run through and grab these. So you have to keep doing each week. I think that's where we started getting into, like, that's where we're starting to see the burnout and feel the burnout.
I was going to say,
like,
well,
go ahead.
I pulled up World of Warcraft's game events, and they have, shoot, the number, I think is 14. I just counted. They have 14 events throughout the year. They don't last very long, at about a week apiece, if even that. Some of them are 2-day to 3-day events. So, like, they have a Day of the Dead event that directly follows their Halloween event. Now, that thing only lasts about 2 days.
Yeah.
And the one thing I remember from their events are, one, they were extremely impactful. Like, they were things that I would be thinking about a month ahead of time. Like, their Halloween event killed it. Special bosses in the dungeon, like, they do stuff like that. And it leaves you feeling a certain way, like that this event meant something. The world changed around this event. You know, this cursed rider comes out. Their Headless Horseman man comes out at Halloween. And you get unique gear from it, some of it just being cosmetic, things like that. But it's not ultra grindy, these events. And I think this is kind of what you're getting at with the ticket, and I didn't mean to really interrupt you there, but
no, the
idea that some of their things are just like, well, you have to have this pet out for the event. One of them is I forget what you actually do for it, but they have like a Children's Week event, which is where I think it's actually tied to charity. I believe if you like buy a mount or something during that time, it helps something like that. Basically, this event, you keep this, like, you have this kid following you around and da-da-da-da, and you get experience or something like that. I don't remember. It's been years since I've done it. But it's not something that you're consciously like, well, I gotta log in every single day for this one ticket, and then I log out of the game and I regret, having to have booted up my computer for it. And yet, I feel it with this. God.
Yeah, I think this is the funny thing. So looking back, I'm remembering back to what we said about the feathers, the ticket system, when that was first implemented, and we were first explaining it, because it was like, okay, so for like Halloween last year, there was one feather that was added with it, and that took 10 tickets, and you could get, I think, 14 or 16 tickets if you did a plunder skull every day. But you didn't have to do that. You only needed 10 tickets, so you could skip a bunch of days. And then, like, New Life was 21 tickets, but you only needed 10. So you could miss half of the event and you'd be fine for tickets. And when the structure was just like, okay, well, we get the Indrik, we get the feathers, and then we're done. And this was a huge point. Like, this was a discussion we had back then. It's like, okay, well, you can complete the Indrik and you don't need to be here for all of the tickets.
Right.
There's a lot of leeway to just kind of like blow off a day or two or a week if it wasn't convenient for you. The only one I think that was really even remotely punishing was the Undaunted Celebration, because it only lasted for a week and it was 3 tickets per day. So it's like, in that case, it was still 21 tickets though.
Right.
So you'd log in and you get your tickets when you did your daily random dungeon. And in moving past that to the current state, where it's like, okay, you've got berries, and you have to have 4 berries for each upgrade, and then to get another one after that, you need another full set of feathers ready to go, or put them together once you've done it. But that puts it at the state where suddenly the ticket threshold to keep up without giving up like the initial version is now, you can maybe afford to miss a day, possibly, depending on the event. That's the big difference here. And that's the one where it's like, okay, well, now we're really seeing the pressure. And especially in the case of these last berries, and it's not an issue with this one, but like with the last event, the berries were only there for a single event. Like, the last berry was only there for a specific event. I remember seeing somebody in zone chat, like, I think it was an hour and a half after the Impresario had vanished, was like, where's the Impresario? I need to buy this berry. And it's like, oh.
Sad.
Yeah. And yikes. I think that's the change. I think that's actually the issue here, because it's like, yeah, it's kind of funny when it's like, oh, look, it's a Pokemon thing. Like, you just keep going through this. But the way the system has been set up, the way this specific progression system has been set up, it's getting kind of brutal. I think that's where. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no. I'm sorry. I thought you were done there. I think that some of this comes from, I like that you shared the history, that there were not very many events when the game started. And I think that I think that the community's call for more events was valid. Mm-hmm. I think the implementation was skewed. I will usually, with things like this, and definitely for this specific event, I would cheer more for a mile deep approach instead of mile wide. They've gone very mile wide. Let's take anything that could possibly be an event and let's incentivize it. And I'm sure in a business standpoint, that comes from them not needing to create new assets for it. But that also starts to show, and that also has to do with where I'm sure we all have a little bit of subconscious burnout, that we're really not doing anything interesting, fun, or new. We're just doing stuff at a rapid rate because, like you said, we need so much of it and our deadlines are so tight and unforgiving and things like that. So the call for more events is valid. But we're just getting like a spit shine on something that's already in the game. Like, hey, don't forget, Dark Brotherhood's been here for 2 years. Don't give them some love. Okay, on to the next thing. We got to do this thing because that needs some love. But it's not an impactful event. I've said this before on stream that I fear. No, not fear. I just don't enjoy a lot of these events that they happen in. They have no impact on the world around them. So there's no holiday flair. There's not really anything new for this Jubilee event. I mean, you have one guy at a dock that gives you a cake. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's the only thing that signifies that there's an event happening. I mean, literally everything else is old assets, right? I mean, you're talking to boards that give you daily quests. You're talking, you're doing all the same stuff. So maybe that's part of the problem too, is that they've gone mile wide instead of mile deep, and it just doesn't feel like we're having any impact on the surrounding world. Again, I look towards our Witches Festival that you go into a cave, you do a thing, but then that's it. Again, there's no Halloween, there's nothing like that happening, there's no decorations, there's no revelry, there's no fun happening.
Well, there's just the one costume where everyone's disguised as a skeletal mage for 30 days.
Right.
I do really like that they finally split that apart. I think it was either this year or last year. I think it was last year when they finally split that apart, because it used to be the XP buff is what changed your character physically. Oh. So it's like you spent the whole week looking like a skeleton, or the whole month looking like a skeleton. Yeah. That was not happiness. So like a lot of credit there. You do have to know you can go into your character screen and right click to cancel buffs to be able to cancel out of it, but still have the XP buff going. But yeah, that was one back then where it was like, okay, this is kind of rough. I actually remember some of that then too, where it was like I had a few characters during the event, and I've never done this since, that the XP buff ran out and I specifically did not re-up it simply because I was tired of looking at the skeleton. I think with the events, like we have some that again are actually pretty good. The New Life Festival is the one I'll still point to and say this is actually a really good event. Yeah. Because it is entirely new content for the event. Now, the assets are reused. You're going to places that exist in the base game. You're not going to new places. Right. But you're going there and you're engaging in something that's tied to the spirit of the day. And I think that's actually pretty good. It's actually one of the Christmas events in games where I look at it and I'm like, this is actually kind of touching at times. It's nice. I would agree with that. It's it's in the spirit of the season. I really do love it for that. And then you get you were talking about new Witches Festival where it's like this is Halloween. You're going out, you're chasing after collecting treats by killing bosses. That's cool, but it's not doing anything really unusual. And even just in the range of reusing assets, I think there's a lot you could do just at a glance. Like there are the assets for the Scarecrow, like the various monstrous polymorphs that exist that are completely unused by enemies in the game, as far as I know. The Scarecrow polymorph, the pumpkin head Spock polymorph. You know what I'm talking about, right? Yes, I definitely do. That you could probably drop into the world as champion tier enemies, like the ones 133,000 health, and just go like, okay, you can get your plunder skulls off everything else, so you can hunt these guys for an achievement. Give it something, like push towards something else, something that does actually say, oh, hey, here's a thing. And I don't know if this is a WoW thing. I think you were talking about it on stream yesterday, the idea of having some seasonal decorations, even if it's not everywhere in the game. Some seasonal decorations to say, oh yeah, no, it's this time of year. would go a long way.
We run into what potentially is a lore problem here, and it's rare that I would defend the lore thing, but again, I really do like to support both sides of it. We run into what people, because I'm really not sure how big the Witches Festival, how that really impacts average citizens in Tamriel, but we run into something larger than that, and that is that regardless of how lore works, the human brain works very contrary to that. So someone out there might be saying, but here's my lore book, and they slam it down and they say, this is why there can't be pumpkins everywhere. But I would say, you know what? We just don't work that way as humans. The reason why do we put up decorations IRL? Because that helps us get into the mood. Like that really is it. You know, if you're not feeling very Christmassy this year, try throwing up your tree. And a lot of times people will say, you know, that simple act of, you know, doing that thing puts them into that mindset. I mean, that's how humans work. We're based in tradition. And I think that's why some of these events feel so flat is exactly what you just called out, where I said, you know, WoW has a template for every town that, you know, when they do that, they do their server restart or whatever it is, their patch day for the holiday, and boom, you log in and all the towns have pumpkins and like streamers or whatever is going on. And they've gone an extra step where they actually add little NPC revelers that just like throw candy or what. They don't do anything. They're not really interactable even. And I know we could very easily do that in ESO, that we could throw those assets in.
That one actually happens with New Life. There are revelers added with New Life.
Are they more than just the tent, or because I'm not?
No, they don't get outside of East March. That's the weird thing. But you do have revelers in East March that pop up in a couple of other places with the event. So. Oh,
that's true. You're right. There are a couple like near, like where you're doing the water jumping and stuff like that.
Yeah, near where the water jumping happens, there's revelers there. I want to say there's some others, like I want to say there's some revelers that are there for like the Bergama Fire Run. Yeah. And there might be some, this is what I'm actually not sure of, there might be some extra revelers in Betnik. But like, that's the thing, right? If you put some extra, you can put some extra NPCs in scattered around, especially if you start seeing them other places. Then that might go a long way towards selling, especially if you do like even if you're doing something else, it doesn't have to be like, you know, non-deciduous trees. It's like, oh, hey, you've got candle arrangements or whatever, or something else to indicate, oh, hey, it's a festival. You can do that. And that's the only thing I'm not sure of. Like, I don't know what the load is, like both on the back end and then also on the servers when you do this. But that would be one way to, you know, get into the spirit. And that's something that really isn't here with the anniversary. Because again, the anniversary is, oh, hey, this guy who makes really nice cakes, really good cakes, is out there and he's giving you a voucher.
Yeah.
That's the lore significance of the Jubilee event.
Yeah.
And I don't blame them, right? Because the anniversary of the game going live is not something that should have a lore concept.
Yeah.
It's a weird one, but it is kind of like, okay, well, this is a thing that happened. Okay, great. But at the same time, I get that weird feeling like of the events, like in contrast to Jubilee, Hearts Day has done a lot better. You remember what that one is?
I don't think I did anything with it.
Yeah, Hearts Day it's Valentine's Day, right?
Yeah.
And what they do is they discount the Scrolls of Mara, they discount some other stuff in the Crown Store that's wedding related. And in the past, at least, they've encouraged in various places mass weddings. Like that's player action. That's not like the NPCs are doing that. That's straight up. They encourage player action of, okay, yeah, buy the scrolls if you want, do the whole wedding ceremony if you want. But, you know, like here, you can get this and you can get your characters married to somebody else. Like that's a system that's been in the game since the beginning anyway.
Yep.
But, you know, it's in the spirit of the season and it's very lightweight to the point that if you don't know what's happening, you don't pay attention, you might not realize it happened at all.
It is an interesting commentary or side discussion of what happens with the idea of let's do more with less, like encouraging player things. What I'm thinking is this game may be so far along in its development in 5 years now that it's not time to do more with less. It's time to do more with more. And that does mean creating new assets. And they don't have to be massive, like you're saying. A lot of the things. So maybe I should revise my statement. We can commandeer assets that exist, like you said, with taking some of those scary, like the polymorph people and putting them in as bosses. Let's do more, but we need to add more to accommodate and facilitate more. Because those weddings could be even more impactful if the game did give them more than just a tweet.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, not everyone is active on every social media site. Not everyone cares about getting their mass wedding photo posted on the ESO website. But if you even add a couple NPCs at all the chapels that start encouraging that, and you could even get funny about this, really fun with some of these events. And if there are races that we think would absolutely despise a certain event because of X, Y, and Z lore reasons, then give them haters out there too, because it's still going to feed into that immersion of it. And again, that's like you just said, I know it's hard to celebrate an anniversary because it's an IRL anniversary, but in game, but it can be done with just a few quick NPC placements, a quick couple VO lines, voiceover lines, and like done. Good, we're gone. That's it. And like you said, there might be server load issues, but I feel like 5 years in, it's time to kind of grab the bull by the horns and say, you know what, we want this event to be legitimate, not just a passing thing, not just something that's actually losing us players, but something that's really something players look forward to in advance. Because I would agree with you completely. I wouldn't imagine myself being a big New Life fan because it's just, I typically, like WoW's Christmas event kind of sucks in my opinion. They add huge Christmas trees to the cities, which are kind of pretty, but the event itself I find very boring. At least I used to. I don't really even remember it at this point, but I never really looked forward to it. And yet I think the New Life one was maybe one of the most interesting events this year because like you said, it did get you into the spirit and the way they did it. It did diversify what you were doing. And at that point, I wonder if you could even diversify things a little bit more. I mean, is there a way that we move away from the daily system of getting tickets and instead just put little rewards behind almost any action in the game where people can get little vouchers by just standard questing like they were doing before and then turn some of it in?
That's something about this. I'm sitting here sort of thinking through this and it actually bugs me a little bit. And this is across the board. It's not even just in context of we're doing this with the events. The use of random drops for cosmetic rewards. Because particularly like right now, and we've been talking about, oh, hey, you have to go in, you have to do all of this stuff. Like the feeling of that that's leading to burnout is these systems are randomized. So, like, if you want the Sai Sahan outfit that's in the, it's coming through this week, and it'll be back next week. That's the, well, I'm sorry, for the people listening, this is, they're all in there right now, and it was last week that Sai Sahan was, you had to do your pledges to roll the dice on it. But that's the problem, to roll the dice on something that's going to be limited time. So right now, what we're facing is, if you want these outfit style pages, which have been asked for again, almost 5 years. People have been looking at it and going, hey, I like Lyris's armor. I want that. I guess now I can actually have it, but it is tied into these systems where you have to go in and you have to repeat the content over and over again and hope for the best.
True.
And that's not a great solution, like across the board. When you've got stuff, put that in contrast to something like the Crystal Frost skin from New Life. There was an RNG element to it because you did have to go out and grab 12 of the New Life writs. But the actual process of getting it was simply complete these items, these little mini quests that you do. You craft stuff for the orphanage, and that's it. Like, that's the way you earn this. That's a lot easier, less painful than I'm just going to have to keep rolling the dice hoping I get this incredibly rare item.
Yeah.
And partially really feeling it because of how hard it is to get pages for Sai Sahan, because we came off of a week where you could get 10 pages in about an hour doing one of the towns, so you didn't get ganked. And that was after a week when you could get about 6 pages in 30 minutes doing a world boss circuit on Somerset. And then coming off of, you could get 7 boxes that have the chance for a page over the course of about 5 minutes doing your pledges. Or doing your writs. Wow. This is where my mind is at. Doing your writs. You can get 3 boxes per character per day, maximum, no possibility for more, and it will take you at least an hour. Probably more. Yeah, that's kind of rough.
Yeah.
And that does put a lot of pressure on. These are not easy to come by, and even then when you crack a box open, it's like, okay, well, this is not what I'm interested in. That random element on these limited time rewards is really brutal, because that does push you towards burnout, towards running and chasing this stuff and burning out. And I do worry about that a lot, like even personally, where it's like, this has been going on for 4 weeks at the time that we're recording this, and it's been exhausting.
Well, and I'm sitting here, and as you're talking, I'm looking over, again, World of Warcraft's Hallow's End event, which is their Halloween one. And now I want everyone to recognize that World of Warcraft has been live for 15 years. So that is 3 times as long as ESO. But here's just a list of some generalizations of what you can get from their event. So these are limited time. They're not related to purchasing anything with IRL money. These are things that are in the game achievable. You can get 2 mounts for Halloween. You can get 5 pets for Halloween. You can get 3 costumes for Halloween and 2 toys, which would be like our mementos, as well as seasonal consumables, which is, this is all very similar to what we've got, right? Like all those things are spot on. Here comes the danger, I think, in some ways, of people trying to balance a cosmetic store with in-game events, because I'm seeing a little bit, you know me, I love ZeniMax getting money, because I recognize, as a business person, I recognize that, paying a company is how that gets transformed into new content. But we are seeing these events where, like you said, we're doing so much for random chances at things. And it feels to me like every event is just a nod to the Crown Store. And I'm a guy that has no problem buying stuff. Like, that's not what I'm saying. I don't want anyone to think like that I'm, revolting against the Crown Store. But there is a problem where these events are more like, hey, there's a thing, but I also want you to go to the Crown Store because there's 50 other items up there that you should really buy. We've kind of heard this before, where there's not very many mounts. I mean, I think you even said this online last night on Twitch, helping someone that was new to the game, where it's like there are 1 billion mounts for purchase in the Crown Store, and there's like 3 you can get in game. I know 3 is way underselling it, but
it's actually 5. Yeah.
Whoa!
So you're not that far
wow!
off.
5! Holy crap! Hold on, sorry. Let me change my whole. But see how much of a problem that is.
Yeah.
It is something that I think ZeniMax, and I understand money, but also you got to invest. This is still in the line of business here. I understand it costs money to make assets, but also investments are important. Investments, you invest up front, you reap the rewards later. And, we do live in a gay world where, again, like if 5 is actually all that you can get in game, that's horrifically low. Now, I know we're getting a free camel this month for daily login rewards. Hooray! But also keep in mind that that only counts for this month too. So if you log in next month, like if you can't get into ESO for May, you don't get this mount.
Well, it's not even that. If you can't get into ESO
25 days,
I think 21? It's a week this month, like a total of a week. Yeah, because it's real back end. 6 days out. Then you miss out on that. Yikes. And that's kind of the. I understand the purpose of the login rewards, right? Like that's to get you to actually keep logging in. And I think so far as it goes, that the system that's there is fine, but the only other sources, like in-game sources for mounts, have been that, and then the summer fall event, and when we got crates from in-game events. So that's stopped happening. But then that would have been a complete crapshoot too, because it's like, well, which do you get? We don't know.
Right.
But they used to pay out, I think it was like 3 or 4 crates. Like you'd log in, you'd kill something each day. It could be anything that would award XP anyway, and that would give you a crate the next day. So like that used to be a system that's been phased out since then. I understand why, because we ended up with absurd amounts of gems from that, but it's still unfortunate that that's gone by the wayside, because it was sort of this, you did encourage people to keep coming back and saying, oh, hey, no, you've already got some investment in this game, even though it was just from doing things. Also kind of a funny thing where this is looping back a little bit and realizing there is another event, and I tend to deride it a little bit on its own, but that does a very good job of setting up a feel for itself, and that's the Jesters Festival.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, very true.
Again, it's a much smaller set of quests. There's only 3 quests for that, but that's one where you do see revelers all over the place.
That's very true.
I think it's only in the quest cities. So like when you're going through Volkengard, you see revelers there. I think you see them up in Skywatch, and I know you see them up at the college. When you're going through Ebonheart, you do see the revelers there in Ebonheart. And like there's the whole quest line there where you're running through there and you're being cheered on by the crowds because you're stealing a pig. And then you've got, the Covenant one where you've got revelers all over the city, getting messed up, enjoying themselves. Like, it does give you the feel that these events are happening here beyond simply, okay, yeah, here's this thing that's this one event that's this guy's on the docks saying, hey, you want me to make you a cake?
Yeah.
Yeah, I trust this guy. He's got to be legit, right?
Right. A guy on the docks making cake.
Yeah. So it's, I think part of it is, I don't know what the delivery system in WoW is for event cosmetics, but I do worry with this event and with others where it's like to simply encourage people to actually run the content to get the rewards as opposed to encouraging them to grind the content for the rewards.
That's the real trick right there, and that's the important thing. I don't want anyone to think that Stark and I are just ripping on the game for no reason, because we always come at things where we have complaints because we're heavily invested and madly in love with this game. We come at it with, here's our critique, here's how we propose that, something could be adjusted, or here's a way to look at it. Because I won't lie, I don't know how WoW does their thing either. I'm looking at something called Tricky Treats that they... Yeah, Tricky Treats is something in World of Warcraft, and it's saying, like, if you get 150 of these, you can buy yourself a pet. Which, again, reduces the randomness of it. But if I remember WoW, and I don't know how this is implemented now, but if I remember WoW, you could probably get these treats from doing almost anything at the time. So that's very different. I would not mind incentivizing everything. And I've proposed this before in potentially future community events, like if we had Summer Fall Part 2, and a second version of that. I don't want you to say, hey, go do this one thing over and over and over again. I want it to be, hey, log in, do anything you like for as much as you want to get this thing. And we don't have that. And look at Abner Tharn Week. They made me go into Cyrodiil to do it. And I know and conversely, for people that hate doing writs, week number 1, do your writs. Yeah. Well, they shouldn't have to do their writs if they don't want to do them. Well, then they don't need the cosmetics. Then they don't need to log in either.
Well, and in this case, it's a much weaker argument than normal, because like, okay, you don't need this, but if you ever wanted to make your character look like Abner Tharn, looking at Abner Tharn, what exactly makes you think of, oh, hey, this guy must be heavily invested in PvP?
Yeah, I actually kind of wondered that at first. I was like, why is he a PvP man? And first I almost thought Sai Sahan first, but yeah.
I thought it was, like, I actually had those backwards. I thought Sai Sahan was going to be the PvP week there for a couple of weeks because I didn't keep track of it. Like, it came up on the PTS. I looked at the notes and was like, okay, cool. But I didn't internalize it because it's not, like, I do spend a lot of time with this game, but it's not like, oh, hey, this is my entire life. So I looked at it, I was like, okay, so Sai Sahan's going to be PvP. And then I look back and it's like, it's Abner Tharn. It's like, okay, well, that makes sense geographically because he's
Cyrodiil.
Nibonese, but I think, why? When you look at Cyrodiil normally, the content that requires you to go in there, like the cosmetic content requires you to go in. There's stuff like the gladiatorial costume and... like there's actually a pet also now, but okay, that kind of makes sense because the arena from Oblivion was in the Imperial City. Cool, whatever. And then beyond that, the event stuff, like the cosmetic stuff you get there, like the motifs for the alliances, the Akaviri motif, which you'll see on people, in Cyrodiil sometimes, and even the Militant Ordinator, which is associated with the battlegrounds. Like that's. The only one of those that doesn't scream PvP to me is the Militant Ordinator, right? These are all sort of PvP themed. Beyond that, we've also got the various teams for the battlegrounds where their armor styles are attached to clearing battlegrounds on the randoms. And then we've got the variant Fanglair costumes, which it's a variant motif style for a style that's already in the game. Cool, whatever. But when you're looking at this, aside from that, most of this stuff is sort of pointed towards PvP to begin with. And then it's like, okay, we took one of the characters from the 5 companions and tied them to PvP. And this is a little bit of a non-issue because we're going to the last week and you can do anything in the last week. And by this point, if you've probably been doing anything for the last 3 or 4 days. But for where we're at right now, it's kind of like, why is this attached to PvP specifically? And the irony is, normally the anniversary event is tied to whatever you want. Like, prior to this year, and I think I even said this, I might have said this when we were talking about the event rundown last year. It's like, I love this event because you do whatever you want. So if you want to do pledges, you can do pledges. If you want to do your writs, you can do your writs. If you want to do, delve dailies, cool. Like, do whatever. And you'll get the random boxes, you'll get the progression towards whatever you're looking for, sort of one random roll at a time. Last year, that was the worm cult motif, and like that was entirely doable. But this year, where it's been the rotating system of, okay, well, you can only do this week, and you can only do this week, that's kind of rough, especially in the context of then tying to stuff, the cosmetics that really are desirable for a lot of players.
So maybe some of this does come down to, again, not trying to just rip on the game here, trying to give constructive feedback, that some of it feels like it was very loosely stitched together to the point that maybe it shouldn't have even been executed in this way. I think one thing we definitely can take away is that events should last no longer than 2 weeks. I'd go so far as to say maybe the hard cap should be 1 week going forward for any event, no more, because sometimes the tantalizing, sometimes the foreplay is the exciting thing. And dragging it out, a lot of games like this, even, ESO as a whole, it's the journey, not the destination. And kind of getting people into the spirit isn't actually just making them do the same function over and over again. Some of these events that really pay off seem to almost be shorter events because, it's something you get to go in there and you do it really hard for a little bit and then you quit because it's over with.
I think
maybe less hard deadlines. Yeah.
No, sorry. I think the one exception to that's probably New Life. I think New Life, you can pretty easily get away with a full 3-week schedule on that simply because of the way the modern world works around Christmas. True. Where it's like, okay, this is the season. And it's like, okay, yeah, you can do your full week run up. You can do your week, in between Christmas and New Year's. And
yeah,
you can
I would agree with that.
On the other end, especially with people having their own personal lives going on through this stuff. Actually, a funny thing, I do not have the polar bear mount, like the white snow bear, because the year it first came up, as a Christmas thing, it was only available, I think, for like December 20th to 25th. I was out in the middle of nowhere in the Midwest because, family obligations. So I couldn't be there for that to pick that up. And tying events down to like, okay, it's only available for 7 days or only available for 10 days, like that, especially around Christmas, that's kind of a rough sell. The rest of the year, though, when there isn't a lot of things going on in general, I think it's a lot more defensible to say, yeah, it probably should not be as long because you will get more of an effect for just saying, okay, we've got this thing, like this is Halloween. It's just, the week before or like, let's say the week before and then like 2 or 3 days after Halloween. And that's another one, ironically, because, again, it saturates everything in pop culture. You can probably get away with extending it longer.
I would agree with that one, too. If you do that,
I think that is the one where it hurts the most, that it doesn't have more associated with it. I saw somebody on the forums asking they wanted PvP flagged for werewolves. I'm like, what would be really cool is going into that and having, like, flagging special PvP modes for that. Like, not even, like theme PvP, where it's like you're going in these specific roles to play against each other. But
I think you're right. I think we could do the Christmas event, the New Life one for longer. And I've still got the WoW calendar up here, so they run theirs from December 16th to January 2nd, which is about the same time as ours, right?
Yeah, I think that's so. The same as ours. Go look it up.
And their Halloween event is October 18th to November 1st, so that's about the same time as ours as well. Actually, that is slightly less time than ours because I think ours started on the 14th as last year. So I would agree with definitely both of those. I think you're very right, too, when you said about the extremely tight deadlines earlier. These events are supposed to be celebrations, not work. But ESO has definitely turned into people's jobs. And I mean that in a horrible way. I mean that's really bad, ZeniMax. You don't want to hear that. You don't want to hear this has become someone's second job. That is the worst thing you could hear. Because what that means is people are now looking at this with the same sort of dread that they might feel waking up in the morning going to work. Like this has become a second 9 to 5. And again, I say that as a streamer hearing this quite often in chat. And this is something that's definitely reversible. You can reverse it immediately. You can do it for the next event. You can immediately take this advice and go, we're just changing the dates on the calendar. Boom, bang, we're done with it. We'll just make a quick numbers adjustment. So that's the blessing here, that this is something that's super easy to fix and requires almost no work. Now, making the events feel eventful is a harder task. That's not something that can just be like, well, we've quadrupled the size of the Halloween event this year. It's significantly larger. It's way more Halloween-y. Like, I get it. That takes a lot of work. But again, depending on how long you want this game to last for, it's something to probably work at now so that Halloween 2020 can be amazing. Because these events are things that only come once a year. That's intentional. Especially if they're a seasonal event like this, like you said, New Life or Halloween or something like that. They are supposed to come once a year. That is why things should feel exclusive in them. But it also shouldn't feel like people need to log in every day for it, I think is a thing we're very much in agreement with. That, like, you should want to log in during those 3 months of the New Year Life Festival to get something fun. And it's kind of got that wintry season feel. But it shouldn't be something I feel like I need to be on the game every minute. Otherwise, I've horribly failed and missed out on the entire event. That's a very different feel. That's going from, like, the one option is let's celebrate the holiday to its fullest. The other option is, oh my God, I'm being punished because I didn't celebrate the event to its fullest. And currently we're in the latter of the two.
So here's a weird one.
Yeah.
Does the DLC anniversary strike you as weird?
Oh yeah, definitely. That's the first time I've ever seen something try and celebrate itself like that.
Yeah, that was because I was just like, that's come back a couple of times when I've looked at it. I was like, wait, what? I'm all in favor of those zones having, like take a week or take 10 days and say, okay, yeah, pay attention to this zone right now because, extra goodies. It's just the DLCs having their own. That was always weird to me, was the DLCs having their own anniversaries. Same. And seeing them stack up the way they has gotten really weird because. So, like, Dark Brotherhood and Thieves Guild get wrapped together, and thematically that makes a lot of sense.
Sure. Yeah.
But these are from the same year cycle.
Right.
Those both follow Hrothgar.
Yep.
So it's like, wait, what? This is strange to me.
I
don't really have much of a critique there other than this is a weird one.
My critique would be this, and I've said it already, so I hope I'm saying it succinctly. That again, I understand why, and I'm not being mean, not trying to be when I say, I get it. We're trying to celebrate something that's a moneymaker, but we also have to understand it's very, very important. We do live in the age of these quick mobile games that come and go, and they're here to make money. I think you were even the one that may have been talking about this, that there's some of these mobile games that are so flash in the pan. They're created to make cash and then die the next day. We're seeing that with Anthem right now, a game that came out 2 months ago and it's already gone. We live in this world of all these games being very ethereal. They're ephemeral, might be the word for it. They just are here and they're gone. And I feel like that these anniversary events actually celebrate the worst thing, and that is that they're celebrating this kind of gross money grubbing kind of aspect. It's like, hey, don't forget we've got this DLC out there. And it's 2019 mindset. You got to look at it that people are cynics because we're inundated with products. And if you try to sell us a thing in the wrapping of it being an event, it still looks like you're just selling something. The Dark Brotherhood is great on its own. It's a solid piece of content. It's probably my favorite DLC. But be careful about overemphasizing it and making it tied to too many things, like, well, you got to do the Dark Brotherhood to get the Indrik thing because because it then just feels like you're trying to sell us the Dark Brotherhood. Mm-hmm. I know that maybe sounds mean, but it is true. That's why a lot of these little mobile games are created. It's like, we want you to spend $100 in our in-game money and then leave. And it almost feels like this is kind of that mentality, that marketing concept creeping into ESO in a small way. But we've been ranting about this for an hour now, Stark. We should probably let the good people go this week.
It's probably true. Yeah.
Now, we didn't get into as large of we actually have been meaning to talk about events. So that's a very valid reason to have had this conversation, and probably therapeutic. So I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts on this too. Please feel free to write us. It's kyledemsterstudios@gmail.com. Honestly, feel free to write us about this because, like I said, this is something we're trying to give positive critiques on. Like, this is a problem. It's a growing problem, but it's not something that it can be changed it can be changed super simply.
Well, I'll still say, like, the basic framework here is actually solid. Mm-hmm. And I do think at a basic level, the events do something positive on the whole, which is they do encourage you to vary up what you're doing. They do encourage you to explore other things. Like, the stated goal for the episode was avoiding burnout. Yeah. And I do think the events, as they're designed in their intention, actually serve towards that goal, because it does encourage you to try things you wouldn't normally. We were talking about the Dark Brotherhood a minute ago, but that was something I hadn't done the sacraments. Right? Like, I hadn't done I did one sacrament back when it released and was like, okay, well, this is kind of novel and not particularly interesting, so I'm going to move on with my day. And I didn't actually go back and finish the achievement until the event this year. So you actually got the sacrament, the box of forbidden relics before I did, ironically. And that's simply because, like, the first attempt at it, the first look at it was not particularly appealing, so I passed on it. And I think with the event structure the way it is, if it had simply been like not paying attention to the DLC at all, yeah, I probably would have missed that content. And I think it's actually some really nice, really unique content for the game. However, when we've gotten this, I think a lot of the burn right now for both of us is the anniversary.
Yep.
Because this is an event that has outstayed its welcome so much. And there was a little bit of warning sign last year. I mentioned this in passing, that the anniversary was extended last year for an extra week.
Oh, yeah.
And that was kind of brutal. And then this is absolutely horrifying, because now we've been engaged in this event for nearly an entire month. And whatever failings or successes are mixed in here, that's been really brutal.
I think a good thing for ZeniMax to do might be to get out the big old whiteboard and actually jot out on a calendar, a full year calendar, and see where these events are falling. Because this is, I think, maybe one of those dangers. If you start looking in a short term spectrum, they don't look so bad. Okay, there's a week and a half break between. But I think like what you're saying, when they start to grow and grow and grow, and there's not a lot of break time, and honestly, 2 weeks is not enough of a break time. I'll come out and say it. I'll speak for my community and say that 2 weeks doesn't do it. It doesn't let people get in the grind not the grind, but I think this is where my mind is. It doesn't let people get in the gear of like living their normal ESO life, which is very important. I mean, IRL, we don't have a holiday every day. And that's probably for the better, because when you have so much, I mean, think about this, everyone out there, what happens when you take your personal email account and you subscribe to all the newsletters. Well, you just eventually stop reading your inbox because it's full of like deal. Everything's a deal. And here's the thing. And this is it. And you just tune it all out, because that's how the brain works. We tune out noise. The events are starting to look like noise. Event. IRL, if Christmas were every day, we wouldn't care.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't.
So the one bright thing before we go out, though, I think this was, like, when you look at the original structure for the Indrik, I think this was the worst step that was necessary. Because so it's going into May. Actually, it's already May for us, and it's already May for the time you're listening. But we now have 8 of the events effectively out of the way for the Indrik. Because when we were looking at the Indrik structure originally, it was going to be like, there's going to have to be 16 events this year. No, one of them just lasts a month. Okay. So there's only going to be 8 events from here on out. And that's going to be a lot more manageable than if they were trying to cram 2 events into a lot of months in the long term. It's just we're at the tail end of when this went completely sideways.
Yeah.
So I'm worried that the structure of the Indrik was a little bit grindier than anybody realized when we were originally recording stuff last year about how this would work. Because I think at that point, our understanding, or at least my understanding, was there was only going to be 1 berry per upgrade. And then the berries would be phased in, so you'd have plenty of time to do this stuff with extra tickets floating around.
Yeah.
And obviously that's not what happened. So yeah, this has been a little bit rougher than we realized. But hopefully it should be a lot less stressful from here on out, simply because they don't need to have as frequent events. And hopefully the calendars can be a little bit clearer moving on.
Yep.
Because again, there's 2 more Indrik morphs coming, and that's going to be 8 events spread over the next 7 months. So...
Well, and I think you said, like you said, leaving on a positive note, remember, you can always step away from these events. That is the good thing. I always encourage you not to do it. I personally don't participate. I haven't participated in an ESO event. I mean, okay, I guess I did my writs, but I was going to do those anyway. And what's the next week? Like, I really didn't do extra pledges this last week because of, I didn't. I did go into Cyrodiil the one day just because I didn't have anything to do anyway. And I was like, well, I'll try the dailies in there because I've never really done them. So like you said, they got me to do something, but I mean, it wasn't for me. And so I just didn't do it. And I would encourage more people to have sort of apathy towards these events too. Like if you're seeing that fork in the road between burnout or apathy, I would choose apathy towards the event. Just don't partake in it. Just ignore it. Pretend it's not happening, because if that's what it means, if that's what it takes to keep people playing, I give it my stamp of approval. And next week, we're going to come back to you guys with a large list of things that you can do to avoid that burnout. And so apologies, we set up an episode and we kind of took it very tangentially in a different way. But again, this is an episode that we've wanted to have for a while, kind of critiques on events and what's going on with it. So I'm glad we got to do it. I'm glad we got to take some time, and hopefully it didn't just sound like we were just hating on the game, because obviously that's not our stance on it. And in fact, I think this is the time to be hating on a game, because we know that the amazing stuff comes in a couple weeks. So it's natural that it's happening, This is our time where we're kind of grinding our own gears, going like, we need things to do. But rest assured, they will be here in a time of this recording, 19 days. So when you guys get it, even less than that, closer to like 15. So let's meet back here next week, Stark. We'll cover events and achievements and all the fun things that you can do. Well, no events. We're not going to cover events. We're going to cover
events.
Achievements. There will be no events next week.
I hope.
Everyone will be bored intentionally. No. But we'll cover all the options that you guys can go about doing it a different way. Until then, come hang out with us over on Twitch. It's twitch.tv/Kyle Dempster Studios. We're there Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, all starting at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Just last night, Stark and I were over there helping a bunch of new players get into the game. So maybe that's something as homework you guys can do, is try and look for new players to help out with things, because they're some of the most, that always gives me the most exciting feel, is when Stark and I can take that time and answer questions and things like that. That's always a very rejuvenating experience to talk to new players. So I recommend that. Find us over on Twitter. I'm at twitter.com/Kyle Dempster STU. Stark, you're at twitter.com/
Michael J. Schwartz.
And the Discord link's below. The guild application link is below, or in your podcast show notes, wherever that below is. Also, I did an episode of the ESO Flash Briefing this week where I covered the items that are in the Crown Store and things like that. So if you want to check that out, I think there's a link below for that. I'll make sure to put one there. And you can search ESO Flash Briefing. I'm good with everything. Any last thing you want to talk about, Stark?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, well then, everyone, we will see you next week. Until then, bye-bye.
Take care.